The common assumption is that after a catastrophic global conflict, nations naturally gravitate towards cooperation. Yet the reality of the post-World War II financial landscape offered little such promise. Imagine the global financial system as a vast, turbulent ocean. Before 1944, this ocean had been ravaged by an unprecedented storm, the Great Depression and the Second World War. National currencies like rudderless ships spun wildly. Each nation, in a desperate bid for economic advantage, attempted to harness the winds for itself through competitive devaluations, sparking vicious trade wars and stifling any hope of collective action. It was financial anarchy. The pressing question then wasn't just how a war-torn world could rebuild, but how it could possibly forge a new, shared financial chart to navigate the storms ahead. Prior to the war, the global financial order was less a coherent system and more an ad hoc arrangement, a buffet where each nation picked its own course. Governments routinely manipulated their currency values to gain trade advantages, effectively engaging in a relentless race to the bottom to make their exports cheaper. This spiraling cycle of devaluations corroded trust, choked international trade, and significantly deepened the global economic downturn. By the time war erupted, this fragile edifice had crumbled entirely, leaving behind a monetary quagmire. The need for a stable anchor, a guiding lighthouse, was acutely clear. It was against this backdrop, in July 1944, even as the echoes of battle still resonated across Europe, that a remarkable gathering took place. 44 nations dispatched their leading financial minds to the quiet, unassuming village of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. Their ambition transcended mere repair. They aimed to construct an entirely new foundation. Their objectives were starkly practical: to establish a stable international monetary system, stimulate global trade, and crucially, prevent the reoccurrence of the destructive currency wars that had defined the preceding decades. They were, in essence, architects sketching the blueprint for a vast, shared global dwelling. The core of their design was a system of fixed exchange rates. But how could all these national currency ships be moored to a common point? Gold, with its inherent stability and universally acknowledged value, emerged as the most logical anchor. However, not every nation possessed sufficient gold reserves to directly peg its currency. The solution involved a pragmatic compromise. The most powerful economic vessel of the era, the US dollar, was firmly anchored to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Subsequently, all other currencies would then be tethered to the US dollar. This intricate arrangement functioned much like a global railway network. Gold served as the fixed gauge, the US dollar became the primary locomotive running on those tracks, and all other currency trains were connected to the dollar, ensuring they moved in relative sync. While a small margin of fluctuation was permitted, any significant drift could be corrected in an orderly fashion, averting the chaotic free-for-all of the past. To maintain the delicate equilibrium of this new system, the Bretton Woods architects understood the necessity of two foundational pillars. Firstly, they conceived the International Monetary Fund, IMF, envisioned as a global financial fire department. When a nation's currency ship encountered a severe economic storm, perhaps due to a significant balance of payments deficit, the IMF would offer a lifeline in the form of emergency loans. Crucially, these loans came with specific policy guidance, designed to help the distressed economy regain its footing. The overarching goal was to contain crises within individual nations, preventing them from spreading contagiously across the entire financial fleet. Secondly, they established the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, the precursor to the modern World Bank. If the IMF was the emergency responder, the IBRD acted as the world's master builder. Its mission was to provide capital and expertise for the monumental task of rebuilding war-devastated nations, particularly in Europe, and later to foster development in emerging economies. They didn't just mend, they supplied the essential materials and blueprints for constructing bridges, roads, factories, and schools, the critical infrastructure vital for sustainable economic recovery and growth. One might pause to consider the counterfactual. What if the leaders at Bretton Woods had failed to reach an agreement? Without the IMF or IBRD, the world would likely have witnessed a return to unbridled currency wars, where nations endlessly devalued their currencies to boost exports, perpetuating a destructive competitive spiral. International trade would have remained stifled by instability and a profound lack of trust. War-torn nations, deprived of coordinated aid and financial guidance, might have languished for decades or even descended into deeper political and social unrest. Global cooperation, so vital for peace and prosperity, might never have materialized, leaving the path to post-war recovery far more treacherous. The Bretton Woods system was not immutable. It ultimately dissolved in the early 1970s when the US dollar's convertibility to gold became untenable. Yet its eventual conclusion should not be conflated with failure. Bretton Woods served as an indispensable launchpad. It laid the groundwork for nearly 3 decades of unprecedented financial stability and economic expansion following the Second World War. It dramatically spurred global trade, facilitated the reconstruction and recovery of devastated nations, and perhaps most profoundly, demonstrated that even in the wake of humanity's greatest catastrophes, it is possible for nations to convene, deliberate, and collectively construct a more orderly future. This system offers a timeless lesson. In an increasingly interconnected world, the stability of individual entities is inextricably linked to the stability of the collective. And sometimes, to tame the wild impulses of currency and forge a prosperous future, what's truly needed is a solid anchor, a reliable leader, and an immense collaborative effort from the sharpest minds.
Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more history daily.